To be continued. Lots of good juice here coming up on the sexiness of our soil. And if you've never seen the Symphony of the Soil movie that we showed here at AREDAY a couple of times, show it to your friends, get the conversation started. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Hello. My name is Michael Bowman, and I'll be the moderator for this panel today. I couldn't be happier to be here today with this group. I've been at AREDAY with all but 1 year of the last 14. I grew up on a ranch in eastern Colorado, which is now owned by the Nature Conservancy, called the Fox Ranch, which has done some amazing work with the Savory Institute. And so I grew up on the back of a horse in a very small rural community, always in love with the soil. And in my adult life, I had the great opportunity to stumble onto Alan Savory and spend some time in Africa, and starting in 1999, where I was exposed to a number of good works that Alan was doing. I think I picked up the nickname dung beetle then. I was fascinated by dung beetles. And then came back to the mainland and continued to do a lot of work in public policy. We worked closely on renewable energy issues first in Colorado, and in 2004, where I had the opportunity to work with Mark Udall, as a great mentor of mine, who was in the House at the time, on renewable energy issues. We were also able to put biochar into the Farm Bill in 2007 for the first time. And so we've been able to continue to do our work on the soils and just see that as certainly one of our mitigation strategies. And so I'm thrilled that as AREDAY now that we have this conversation, that we've had the opportunity to have the last panel give us impart their wisdom on us, and for this panel that we have now today. I couldn't be more happy. So with the panel today, we're going to start with Bill Reed. Bill Reed is with Regenesis. They have offices in Santa Fe, Arlington, Maine, and Massachusetts, and Pierce, Arizona. And they are world leaders in generative development. Bill we're putting him on first because Bill does have a tight schedule. He may have to step off the stage before we're done, but we want to give him ample opportunity to share his work with us and his slides. So we'll start with Bill, and I'll let you go ahead and give a little overview of Regenesis and your program.
Great, thank you. Michael, right? Yes. Good, just meeting everybody. Well, delightful to be here. This is my first AREDAY. I hope to be back. It's like drinking from a fire hose. Not quite sure how to ingest it all. And thank heavens for Living Systems self-organization, because so many ideas and so many possibilities and technologies and processes that have been proposed. We can't manage that ourselves. So hopefully Living Systems in action will allow a lot of this to coalesce. And a little bit about Regenesis. We were founded by a few permaculturists, very deep system permaculturists, and organizational development and psychology people thinking, well, if regenerating the soils are good, how do we regenerate human life? How do we regenerate human spirit? Because both are required as a whole system of possibility, a whole system of co-evolutionary relationship. And as a recovering architect, green architect, I was wondering why we haven't been getting very far very quickly. If you look at this is from Procter & Gamble, a guy by the name of Charlie Crone, systems thinker, developed this framework along with David Bowman called levels of work in terms of living systems. So I ask architects and engineers, who are my primary audience, where are we on these levels? Just a quick call out. Where are we? Behind? Not here, down here, right? So we're not even at stabilized. But it's interesting hearing architects speak, because they're actually working on improvement. They're improving their buildings. Then they say, well, we're improving. And that's true. So what really is going on here is that we're really in a nested system of life. And we may be working right here. How does it cascade out into the larger system? And so the questions that we're holding as Regenesis is, how do we develop massive change, develop it quickly, and allow it to be sustained? Or in other words, one way to think about this is, how do we sustain sustainability? because regeneration does not mean just once. You don't regenerate something and walk away. The re is really important. Rebirth. Birth, life, death, rebirth. Birth, life, death, rebirth. That's an evolutionary process. And we actually have never really been exposed to this, not never, but our culture is really not conversational at the minimum about what it means to participate in evolution. So generally, the sustainability movement is operating at the stabilize, operate, or maintain level. Sustainability, as it's practiced in the green building world, is a slower way to die. We've all heard that. This conference is actually bumping it up to the improve level. Then the question is, when do we regenerate? How do we regenerate that in a culture? So that's what we're working on. And I love this quote from Kat Anderson. How many of you have read Tending the Wild by Kat Anderson? It's a wonderful book, and there's a number. You go to the USDA site, there's 100 peer-reviewed references now on how Native Americans were actually managing this complex system. I love this quote. And also, this is about beyond mimicking nature. I mean, I love what Janine Benyus and the whole biomimicry movement is doing. That is not enough. We have to become nature. So I like to think about bio-becoming. California Indians believe that when humans are gone from an area long enough, they lose the practical knowledge about correct interaction, and the plants and animals retreat spiritually from the earth or hide from humans. When intimate interaction ceases, the continuity of knowledge passed down through generations is broken, and the land becomes wilderness. How do we reunite ourselves as an integral species with all of life? That's the fundamental question that we're operating with. And this diagram, we can't actually go through the nature of our practice in how many minutes do I have left? 6 or so? 6. Okay. So I want to leave you with one, what I consider to be one of the richest frameworks. This is a 5,000-year-old framework. It's been seen on walls in ancient Asian temples. It's considered a Sufi invention by some people. It's called the Law of Three. And it is used consistently throughout our work, and maybe it can be of help to you. It's that all life, all design, all thinking can be seen as an activating force and a receiving force, or a restraining force. You want to do a building? What gets in the way? Budget, gravity, government, NIMBYism, and somehow we do or think about politics. We have a force and we have a force. And typically, the highest aspiration we have in our political world anyway is compromise. Now, compromise is another slower way to die. Compromise means that I give up a little, you give up a little, and the next time we come along, we give up a little more, and we give up a little more, and we drive ourselves into the ground. So compromise ought to be a word that we excise out of our language. I'm really serious about that. It is death. So what's the alternative? Well, thank you. The alternative is harmonization. And how do we harmonize? Huh? Cool. So, how do we harmonize? Is we actually, by actually getting to the core or essence of what is activating us and the core of what is restraining or receiving, we can actually work miracles. And I'm surprised every time it works. Because if we take the time to find out what is the essence of a development company, developers are many of our clients who want to build a project or a building, yet they know they can't do it without the help and support of the community. The community has their own ideas. How do we get to the core of what the community really wants, the core of what the developer wants, and we find out that in 100% of the time, we've been able to harmonize that, heal nature, heal the natural systems, bring back social systems, get profit for the developer, and continue to build the capability to continue to improve the larger system. So some quick aspects of this is that we expand the place that we work. Eisenhower said, if you want to solve a problem, have trouble solving a problem, enlarge it. And so the planet is a little large and a little abstract to say heal the planet, but what we can talk about and what we can manage are the places we live. We actually, what's really cool is that we can actually fall in love with life again, because when we understand our places and we fall in love, that is a heck of a lot better motivator than guilt and fear. Yeah, I want to, that's, woo! So, I'd like to tell this to architects, your project is not the project. Your project is an acupuncture point for working on the largest manageable system. So to give you a quick, and by the way, any project, any activity, any design, any technology is an opportunity to heal the planet. if we think this way. So, sorry. This is just a sample project. We're working in Viña del Mar, Chile, 19-hectare tank farm, 25 activists against this developer. They universally called the developer the enemy, in quotation marks. And we were brought in because they heard that we knew how to harmonize complexity. And they said, we don't understand how you're going to do that. We don't even believe you can do it, but it's better than 15 years worth of lawyers. So we're going to give you 2 months. Figured that was a worthwhile challenge. So the developers were all blamed for this, and what we did is we introduced people to the potential, not the problems. We didn't want to hear about problems in the city. We could tell the city was dying. It is a dying city. They're all against the developers because the developers, in their mind, have destroyed the city. We said, well, that's not going to help you, but can we look at the potential for health in this place and what you have lost? So that the little yellow line shows the development area. We saw this whole ecological region as larger as the project. And what we showed them was habitat connectivity, water resourcing, bringing back the health of the estuary, social justice issues, beach erosion, mobility. People were activated around certain issues, but we showed them what this place, the patterns of life that this place existed in over the centuries and millennia, and what was possible now. People said, well, sign us up. And then what we did is we said, instead to the developer, we said, your job is not to build your project. Your job is to work with this city. Because when we went to the developer, we said, what do you want to do? They said, we want to give a gift to the city. And they had, to me, they had sounded like they were going to war with the city. They had a public relations department, and they were tracking SWOT analysis with all the community activists. Said, the war, it doesn't sound like you really want to give a gift. It sounds like you're in battle. And that was a shock to them.
1 minute, Bill.
Thanks. So we flipped the developer to say, your job is not to work on your project. Your job is to work with the community and so the typical relationship is, right, we give a firehouse, we'll give you a park, we'll give you some more money, and then we'll get some additional square meters. What we did is we said the city and the ecoregion is all of our responsibility. The developer became one of the stakeholders, and with that in mind, when we presented this to the stakeholders, including the developer, all the activist groups, they said, yes, we want to co-create with the developer. And that took 2 weeks to flip that entire dynamic. And in 6 months, now there were a number of people that did not want to meet with a couple of gringos from the States. And after 10 months, though, of this core group of about 40 to 60 people working on their particular issues and working together in a unified voice, they built a field in the city where other people started coming. And the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, this will be the punchline, called up our client and he said, I don't know what you guys are doing, but count us in. This is the first time the city's been able to dream in 30 years. So that's the result. If you can actually get people working together as a whole living system, we can heal the earth and each other in one fell swoop. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. What a great story, Bill, and very inspiring. We're going to move on next to Jerome Osentowski with the Central Rocky Mountain Permaculture Institute. Jerome, you have a presentation as well. If you'd put Jerome's statement up, and we'll get started.
Well, great. I'm going to take you, back down to earth. About 15 miles from here is where Central Rocky Mountain Permaculture has been for about 35 years. How does this thing work? The green button. Okay. So permaculture is permanent agriculture and permanent culture. And it's a design process. And where do we get our inspiration? In my backyard, I have Basalt Mountain, so I can go on a 3-hour hike up this mountain. This is an extinct volcanic mountain, and there's a thin veneer of vegetation on a rock pile. So basically, in the beginning was a rock, and so and we take time out for rock hugging, because you don't have to go to Stonehenge or anything, or Easter Island, that's right there. And this, farther up on the mountain, you see areas that have never been vegetated, only by the lichen, and maybe a few dug firs that the squirrel left. And then there's all the waterways are, filled with aspens, and these are like the guilds on the mountain, the aspen guild, And that's my favorite one because I live in just below about 2,000 feet in a pinyon and juniper forest. It's very dry. But I go up there and I commune with, with the rocks and aspens, and there's no biochar up in the aspen grove. It's just like this, the logs fall down and they rot and everything just kind of regenerates, and there's no deadheading. And this is an intern of mine who's written a major book on carbon farming. And this is basically, forest gardening is carbon farming. That's a technique that, in his book, he has about 20 different examples of agroforestry, which is carbon farming. Now, this is my site, about 2,000 feet below the peak. And if you can see in the background, there's pinyon and juniper, no soil. And I've been growing annuals and perennials on this for about 40 years. And it's a full-on food forest with about 200 varieties of everything imaginable. And we have a tropical greenhouse, a power plant. And these are just some of the guilds that when you're up in the aspen forest, you see all the companion planting, and you see things working together, and there's medicines there, there's trees falling down and rotting, there's mushrooms eating it. So you look at that model and you kind of, I'm going to have to say mimic, but you can do it better than that, because you're not just doing the plant stuff, you're integrating the animals. So there's lots of biocontrol there for animals. I have lots of comfrey, lots of agroforestry, chop and drop. These are some of the yields that we get. And when they're spread out so far with 200 varieties, they have 20 varieties of apricots. So, and they're spread out through the 1 acre. So some years I got 100%, some years I get 10%, some years I got 50%. And that's with cherries and everything. So not do I get a 3-week apricot season, I get a 3-month apricot season, just because of the elevation and everything. Mulberries are a great crop. And then this is a sanctuary, not for me only, but it's for all the birds and the wildlife and all the stuff that we attract there. There's the ducks are swimming in their dinner, and then on the right they're allowed to go out in the forest garden and eat slugs. And, the snakes are there all the time. We have wild ducks flying in. We mentor about 40 turkeys and deer as well. We have a whole extra. So, and then we run everything through the animals, basically. It's a cut and carry operation, and then we take their litter and mulch, and we basically worm farm. The whole place is a worm farm with biologically rich in mycelium and microbes, because we added all that, and we continue mulching and we continue moisture. On the left, there's the turkeys, the wild turkeys. We've got about an acre of an area that we manage for turkeys and deer, not for squirrels. But and we get about 50% of what's there, and they get 50%. So just embracing the wildlife. And when I go up on the mountain, I look for tracks. I see bobcats, I see lions and bears. This is my Mediterranean greenhouse with the forest garden and the insectary and medicinal plants in the foreground with a power plant there. Inside is a 20-year-old fig tree. So we get 5 months of fig season, and we grow other things in there at different seasons. And then I have a tropical greenhouse. So by using very simple technologies, we can grow tropical plants year-round and do all the research and have fun because of the climate battery technology that we developed over the last 30 years. Michael Thompson's my partner in ecosystems design. And we do this, I call it Polish geothermal, because I've been working on it. We didn't do the very first one. We did the second one in Colorado, I believe. And now they're doing them all over the world because of the book we wrote. And it's just taking the ambient air from the greenhouse, putting it into the soil, sometimes down to 5 feet. and that's just a thermal mass, and you can bring that back up at night and heat the greenhouse. We use lots of other simple passive solar, good ventilation, all the innovative stuff that people have been doing for centuries, like the Osentowskis. Then we also put the climate battery in the domes, and it makes the domes more efficient. This is my tropical greenhouse. On the left, I have passion fruit is creating shade. So if you have canopy, you don't have an overheating system. I have no fans on. My greenhouse, my tropical greenhouse, is cooler inside than it is outside today. And then we have a stack system with agroforestry trees, leucaena, papaya, down to comfrey. Then you go down into the ground cover. This is indoors and outdoors. We grow medicinal and culinary herbs. I just took some of the brahmi there, which is a brain stimulant. And I hope I hope it's working. Anyway, so we have a tincture business, we have a nursery, all generate themselves or come out of this perennial agriculture. So there's about 10 businesses that in multiple yields, and it's just, we have to be imaginative to figure out how many more we can actually get off of an acre of ground. So we know what we have now. These are two authors that have written great books. Corporations Rule, then he followed up with The Post-Corporate World and Naomi Klein's Shock Doctrine, and she's just got a new book out. So they're telling us what's bad. They're suggesting how we're going to go. You're suggesting how you're doing it. There's lots of people who have grown books out there. So creating a new economy, which is kind of a bunch of cooperatives on a small piece of land, is what we're going to be doing. The first one is our nursery, which makes about $30,000 a year. And Vanessa's over there. She's going to stand up after a bit and show you some images. But we have all these other potentials with propagation material, vegetable selling, compost tea. We have a commercial compost tea machine. So the possibilities are endless. But basically, we need to step back and get off the hamster wheel. And Edgar Tolle, he says he's had 3 gurus in his life, and they've all been cats. And so I watch my cats. I've watched my cats a lot just to see what I should be doing. I should be napping right now, actually. At least I'm not standing up. But we created this paradise for them and for us and for all the wildlife. And it's pretty amazing, right? What you can do with just bringing in carbon material and putting it in the ground and letting the worms and the microbes eat it.
All right, thank you, Jerome. Oh, that's a great story on harmony to layer onto what Bill had talked to, harmony in nature. And nature gives us an abundance and everything we need if we just work with it instead of against it. Our next speaker is one of my favorite characters from the Valley, Mr. Brook LeVan from Sustainable Settings, and we're going to give you the floor for the next 10 minutes, Brook. A man who needs no introduction in this part of the world.
Hi. I think I'm going to take you down into the depths of the earth and then out beyond the solar system and maybe past all the zodiacs, all the constellations, and then beyond the Milky Way. What is happening for us is 20 years ago or 21 years ago, my wife and I and my 5-year-old navigated the Yellow River, which is about 4,000 miles long. And that was an adventure in its own right. But while we were in China, we saw environmental degradation that scared the hell out of us. And we came home and we were artists. And so I'm perfectly unqualified for what I do every day. I've just So 20 years ago, we landed in the valley. The Anderson Ranch Arts Center brought us here for, Doug Casper brought us in to do a body of work. And then we had a show at the Aspen Museum and then down at BMOCA in Boulder. And that was our last exhibition. And we went over afterwards to Woody Creek. And our work had become more and more less about precious objects and museums and galleries and things like that, and much more about social, art as a social stimulant. And so we began to do community-based work. And so somebody said, go over to the Aspen Community School and meet George Stranahan and Deb Jones and a bunch of other people over there, and Patty and all those folks. And sounds like you might fit in over there. And so we had a couple months. We were going off to India. I was going to teach at Shankanikaten, the Gandhian University out there, outside of Calcutta. And so we went there and we did George said, you know, you can be visiting artist, and so before you take off for India, why don't you go do that? And so we did, and while we were there, we were ruminating over what happened to us in China. It takes a while for these things to settle in, and we wrote up a 6-page proposal and a budget, and we sat on a boulder with an angel, and we told him what we wanted to do, or what we needed to do. This tells you a lot about this valley. And he said, we all need to do this. What do you need? And I said, well, first year's budget's $185,000. Never asked anybody for that much money before. And he said, it's in the bank, let's try it. And that was 20 years ago. I get goosebumps every time I tell that story. But so we started up there on 200 acres, and we started to affect that place. And it was a brilliant start, and we got to meet a lot of great people in the valley and found support to do this. And we wrote sustainable settings. We haven't changed. We wrote it up. We're still on track. And after about 5 or 6 years, God bless him, you know, we had to have a committee meeting to decide where to plant a tree. We knew we needed our own turf. And so we spun off and we looked around and we found this gem down in the Crystal River Valley, 30 miles as the crow flies from here. And it's 244 acres and 90 irrigated and 150 wild. Good water, 1880, 1890 rights. And we were land rich. We walked 12 people out there, and actually the Lewis family put up the bulk. The board came up with a chunk and it impressed them, and then Adam and Peter Lewis gave 2.1, and we bought the ranch. So as much as I need to answer to a board, I don't have to answer to a whole lot of other things except nature and except all the life in the ranch that we work with. And is that Bob? Bill? Bill and Jerome's heart is out there, so big. And this woman I want to give lots of time to. But we did all the right things. We looked at, Sir Albert Howard, and, Alan came later, Savory, but his predecessor was André Voisin. I'm butchering his French name, but who left the laboratory to go out and watch the cows. And we started doing all those things, but we inherited a mess, and we inherited, not like what you just showed us, but we inherited an industrial agricultural 90 acres, and toxic, sprayed with insecticide, herbicide, and synthetic fertilizers. And so we began to work, and we knew that we asked ourselves a basic question: what are we capable of? This is going to be maybe a thread through all of us, I don't know. And we keep asking ourselves that question. And so what we did is we began to do all the physical or horizontal things that we understood and we could see. Permaculture and good sound organics, you know. Had a lot of good people out. Wes Jackson came out and spoke in '04, our first year. And he's been with us as an advisor for years. And Wendell, I started reading in '70s, '80s. Wendell Berry, and all these people. So anyway, a lot of help, a lot of folks helping us out. And so we got to a point 12 years in on this ground where we were teaching permaculture. We had Jerome come in and do projects and things, and we've done a bunch of things. But it was all this way, horizontal, physical. You can see it, you can touch it. And it wasn't until we began to address biodynamics and messing around with this biodynamics. What is this biodynamics? Now, I'm a skeptic, and I try, but I'm also an artist, and I also don't have a lot of baggage in agriculture, and so we're willing to try just about anything. We have our ethics and principles, and they're based in permaculture, and they're based in a lot of other, the Hanover principles, things like that. Folks here know what that is. And you can look at them on the website. They're nothing new to this group. So if they get through that filter, or those filters, then we'll try it. Well, putting manure in a horn and burying it in late September and having it go underground through the winter celestials to gain subtle forces from the cosmos and bringing it up in the spring and taking a handful of that transformed material and putting it into 3 or 4 gallons of water and creating a vortex and structuring the water, right? And then going out and flicking that on your place. Do I look like somebody who would fucking do that? But let me tell you, walking around like a fairy has changed our lives. And so what we are doing now is we are vertical farming. And I don't mean putting juice in rocks to grow lettuce. I'm talking about our vermiculture's 90 acres. We don't have a box. We're like him. Our acreage is our vermiculture. So the NRCS is, 1 minute. The NRCS came to us in 2014, and they said, hey, we're going to do this new testing regime. We've decided, listen to this, we should test the life in the soil. Duh. And so they said, would you want to be in this testing regime with 75 farms and ranches? And it's everything from you nut jobs, to GMO, fence row to fence row, till, all one crop, right? And so 14 was a baseline. 15, they came back and they said, what are you doing? And then we tested 16. So we have hard data, which, whatever, taste our food. And chefs in the valley are saying to us, your flavor profiles of your food are untouchable. I can't get that from any nearby farm or ranch, and I cannot get it from any provider that comes in. So what we're talking about is, ready? Cosmic nutrition. We are all malnourished. All of us here are malnourished. And there's a lot worse than that. We have severed our relationships. We are now living in a holocaust of relationships. We are out of relation. And this work we're doing on the ranch, if I told you what I did before I got here today, you wouldn't even believe it. We are loving our place. And we are working through our hearts, and we are working with, we are the heroes of the cosmos. Okay? We can do so much more. We're doing only 50% of what we can do.
cosmos. Thank you, Brook. Well, our next speaker, I must say, I spent time a couple of nights ago on Maryel's bio, and I was really touched. And I put her at the last today because I thought it was appropriate to wrap up with the feminine wisdom. And I do, I believe, and I think something shared by a lot of people in this room, that it is the women, it is the feminine that is going to fix these problems, because it's been men that have caused them. So, I know it is too. But we're honorary girlfriends here, but the four of us. But Mynoo, you've got a great story, very touching, and I can't wait to see your presentation and for you to share that wisdom and your journey with all of us here as we wrap this up.
Thank you very much, and it's really a great privilege to share this panel with all of you. Mm-hmm. And also congratulations to Chip and Sally and the whole AREDAY team. It's been such a fabulous experience coming here 2 years later and to really see such a focus on implementation, making it happen. So it's been completely invigorating, even though there's a bit overwhelming with all the practical information that has come through. So very pleased to be here. Yes, I'm Mynoo Maryel. I wasn't always that. It was Mynoo Blackburn. In the corporate world of London, wore three-piece suits, ties, pants, all of that. Did beauty parades of banks and financial institutions. And got to a point where nothing made sense in my life anymore. I had everything from a material perspective, but deep within me there was a hollowness. And it was in that moment that I made a choice, went to Bali, spent 3 weeks really looking for what am I to do next. And it was in that search I realized that actually I had completely lost connection to myself, being out there like we talked about. So I embarked on a journey within, literally made a choice that this next phase of my life was going to be about living an extraordinary life where all aspects of my life can coexist with ease, grace, and joy. I didn't know how to do it, so I decided to be this amazing mentor to myself as I had been before. And through that, I think I communicated or connected with the universe or the cosmos, as you say, and the universe decided to unleash all its resources. And the first piece that occurred was a complete clarity about what I'm here to do. Why am I here? And I got that my role is really to connect humans and humanity to the miracle that they are. And miracles, expecting and accepting miracles are the norm. What is a miracle? Where something beautiful happens that makes your heart sing. And so it isn't something, someday, one day, magical in the future. It's there every moment. And once I accepted that, okay, fine, let's take it on. At this point, I had entered kindergarten again. And I had that complete, and I was loving going to school every day because the school was like 24/7. And everything was completely new. And I decided that I was going to call this my miracle lens and look at everything that was occurring in my life, good, bad, ugly, beautiful, through the miracle lens. In that context, looking at what is it that's beautiful, that's occurring, that makes my heart sing. And it was, applying that miracle lens that really gave birth to what became the poem, the manifestation of my soul purpose. The poem which stands for the Palace of Extraordinary Miracles. And I was, in my meditation, I was like taken on a tour of the world with the poem Consciousness in Action. And that was deeply inspiring. So in the poem, we have created it as, just like the IKEA Foundation, actually, I had no idea that that's how IKEA was structured. We have for-profit entities, but most of the stockholding is held by the Poem Foundation. And the Poem Foundation, we are always looking to pave pathways to miracles. And we do that through transformational wisdom. A lot of that is coming through me, but there's a lot that is out there that is aligned to miracles being the norm, and we are really bringing all of that together. It's also about transformational estates and transformational experiences. And we are really focused on what we call as full spectrum well-being, where thriving physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and environmentally, all of these fire on, on all cylinders all the time. Now, the foundation of miracles for everyone is dignity. If dignity is compromised, it's a little hard to switch into and start using the miracle lens. So the initial initiatives and the focus of the poem is really about restoring dignity and enriching lives. We have our own eco-framework, and this is the stuff that we do out there where we are really looking at, in the centers, looking at a combination of functional, sustainable, beautiful design approach to development. Our dwellings, our spaces, our centers heat and cool themselves, generate their own power, purify their own water. They have their way in which they sanitize and process their own refuse. And I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to keep moving forward. One of the projects that I want to talk about is a piece of work that we are doing in India, and it is about reversing desertification and the effect it has on people. I was so shocked. When I left India and went to live in London for 29 years, didn't really think I would go back to India for any length of business until when the time was right and I was spiritually ready to take on a land as huge as India. It hit me. It was just a year ago, and was like, wow, there is so much opportunity. There is level of literacy is really high, and the problems are huge, and very greatly self-motivated people wanting to make a difference. A land where desertification is expanding, and yet it's a land rich in sunlight, rich in rain, but it's lacking systems and ways in which they can actually make this come about. So we use 3 levers in the project that we are doing in India. It's about capturing water. This whole concept of digging holes for water. I mean, hello, water comes down from the air. How about capturing it from there? But that's not enough. You can capture rainwater. It's not necessarily safe to use. It has to go through a purification process. And again, so in our system, we use that. It looks like regular water tanks, but they are quite different, and they go quite deep below the earth to get the purification to happen along with the earth. We have this whole regeneration of living soil and localized on-site sanitation, which, again, our whole idea is to empower people to do it themselves. I'm not an expert in any of these things, and in this whole journey, my journey into miracles has opened me up to allow for the best and the greatest and the most effective to show up, and they show up. And these are some of the people that we are working with in how we are handling the India project. And there are others as well, but these are the big masters that are coming in with us. We are using technologies used by Michael Schlesinger, where he's converted this land where it was. In 10 years, it's become, it's transformed. Now with the new technology that has been developed in the context of soil, he's able to achieve that in 4 years as opposed to 10 years. This is, soil, health of soil, topsoil. All of this stuff has been part of my, going up to primary school education. So exciting to realize what is possible. This is what before, and this is what is achieved in 2 years using that same technology. So it's really, so the project we're working on is in Goa. It's 100 acres. The soil is actually affected by some mining, and this technology is starting to have quite an amazing effect even in that region. Permaculture plays a huge role. John, who is a part of our team, he's bringing that in. We are running permaculture boot camps with women leaders who we are bringing together. And there are large expanses, which are like the one on the left. And people are enthusiastically working with us. The biggest challenge we had in India was the grazing of cows and cattle. And right now, there's like a big campaign on not killing cows. So it's causing even greater challenges. So this sort of stuff, it's educating me, and it's educating everyone else. This is just our water harvesting, and it's not enough to harvest water. You have to deal with the sewage at the same time, and that's what this shows. Now, all of that was fine. We've got the experts that are doing it. How do I bring the miracle magic into it? And that's where I literally went back in. And last year, I was no artist, but somebody up there decided to take me in and mentor me to become an artist. And I've created a body of paintings, which I call as the Miracle Water Paintings. And they structure the water, and they give life to water. These are just a couple of little home experiments just to show you the regular water after a day of sprouting and the miracle water. It's completely different, the effect. Those 2 glasses down there are puffed rice in regular water, puffed rice in miracle water, and that's the effect it had just in a day later. These are the paintings. I use crystals to do them. This is using ruby. It looks like petals put together. A few more. The one Miracle Glow is an interesting one. It actually has brought in the essence of sunshine. So we are able to have some pretty amazing growth of plants indoors where there is no sunshine. It's quite interesting to use these things. So really, it is all about co-creating, collaborating, and it's all about coexistence. So I'm excited to join forces with everyone here and join forces with all the powers that be across all dimensions. Miracles are the norm. Let's make it happen.
What a great wrap-up. Thank you, Mynoo. Okay, one quick statement from Brook, and then we're going to move to the next panel.
I brought a few billion friends with me. On the table is some soil I dug out of our acre of CSA garden right before I came. And it's rated, it's been tested by the NRCS to have 10.5 to 11% organic matter. Now, when I asked him what that meant, I played dumb. I said, "Is that good?" And he said, "Well, in grad school, one of my teachers got a hold of some virgin forest floor, and that tested out at 11%. So that's Colorado dirt. That is not compost. That's what we grow our lettuce in. Don't thank me, applaud them." And one more thing, can we hold this up? This is for our group here. Sometimes I just get a little pissed off, and this flies at the ranch. It's a little tattered.
Oh, I like that.
Build soil or die. This is our prescription for humanity and all of life.
Very good.
Great.
Yeah, and I want to have Vanessa come up, and Vanessa's my nursery person.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, panel.